University of Texas at Austin. He also has a Master of Arts in Government from the same university, and another MA in Theology in this case at St. Mary's University, San Antonio, Texas. And today he's going to share with us his seminar on Bob Dylan and musical poetry. And without further ado, because it's not necessary, let us introduce in the milestones that led Bob Dylan to win the Nobel Prize in 2016. So, very welcome.
Hello, good morning. It's good to be here. For some of you, maybe this is the second time. If I don't remember you from Buka, at least I recall that I gave a presentation at Buka, but I'm old enough now that I forget these. So, I'm called many things by many people. I used to be a soccer referee in the United States. So, but today, for all practical purposes, I respond best to Blake. This is how I've been called all of my life. But if you want, here in Argentina, I'm also called Gringo. I can explain that to you another time if we have more time. But right now we have, I have selected 15 Bob Dylan songs to listen to. We can talk about. I've given you a handout. If you look on one side, you'll see the different songs that we have, the albums that they came from, the year that they were first recorded, and then there's also a column for performance, because what we will be listening to and watching on the screen is not necessarily what was recorded on the album. Okay? Does anybody have problems understanding my lousy Texan accent? Do you understand? Okay. So there's actually going to be two parts of the presentation. One will be about Bob Dylan and the milestones in his journey towards the Nobel Prize. And the other part will be the milestones in my journey to connect to Bob Dylan's music. It was only on Christmas Day of 1995 when I remember the moment, and I'll talk about it later, when I decided I wanted to study and to understand Bob Dylan. I grew up with his music, but it wasn't until that moment that I decided he's an important person that I want to know more about. So, what I will do to cover these 15 songs is to take you on the journey that I went through to connect to Bob Dylan's music. Some people like his music, some people don't like his music. In a couple of minutes, if and when my wife arrives, we all clap for her for making it on more or less on time. My wife does not like Bob Dylan at all. She hates his voice. We saw him in concert. She doesn't like him at all. But Dylan is that kind of artist. He has a strong effect on you. You like him or you don't like him. My purpose today is not to tell you that he's great and to make you like him, but he's an important cultural figure. And some say he's the most important cultural figure of the last century. I think he's important. I think he's interesting, whether you like him or not. And we have about 90 minutes. If you want to stay longer, I'm happy to talk to you. Just on time is my wife. If you could all please. So, you have your sheets. On the one side, we have the songs. On the back side, if you have time and if you're interested, I'm interested in your comments. So that the next time I do this, maybe I can improve it. Hopefully, I've made an improvement since the presentation that I made at Copia. There was a comment that was made to me, and it was an excellent comment, and it made me rethink what I did. So the more comments that I receive from you, maybe the better it will be, the less painful tell you about myself. I was born in New Orleans, Louisiana in 1954. Okay? But I grew up in Houston, Texas. If you have a mental map of the United States, you know that I'm from the South. This is why I say I am not a Yankee, because where I come from, Yankees are from the North. There was a civil war that was fought many years ago. But it doesn't affect me now, but for me it's funny to think of myself as a Yankee. In Argentina, I understand that I'm a Yankee, but this is why I prefer bingo. I grew up, there we go. I grew up in the decade of the 1960s. Maybe you've heard of the 60s. It's a cultural decade. We'll talk about it very briefly. I think it's important to understand because this is the time that Dylan emerges with his music. And he has such a profound impact, not only in the United States, but even around the world. Okay? And there we go. I lived most of my life in Austin, Texas, which is the capital of the state of Texas. It's where the University of Texas is. And perhaps you have heard of Austin city limits. Okay, so that's the city that I've lived in most of my life, and this is the city that, after New Orleans, I call home. Maybe you've heard of Stevie Ray Vaughan. So that's a statue of Stevie Ray Vaughan that's normally on the shore, but this is Town Lake, a river, the Colorado River, and it flooded so bad it looks like Stevie was walking on water. Austin's also known for bats. They have a large colony of Mexican bats. And the motto of the city is, keep Austin weird. So now you know why I've lived there so long. Next slide. The 1960s was a period of transforming social, political, economic, and cultural change. And this is just an example of some of the things that were happening during that time. The Cuban Missile Crisis, which included the good Dr. Che Guevara, who was living in Cuba at the time. John F. Kennedy was president. He was assassinated in 1963. The Second Vatican Council, which made sweeping changes in the Roman Catholic Church. In the United States, we had the Civil Rights Movement. The Vietnam War was raging, and there were protests, even riots in the streets. Martin Luther King, who was the head of the Civil Rights Movement in the United States, was assassinated. So too was the president's brother, Robert F. Kennedy, when he was running for president. In 1969, Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. We had Watergate and political corruption. And we had the 1972 Munich Olympics, which in many ways changed the world because up until that point, the Olympics were open. People could come and go. But when the Black September group came in and took the Israeli team hostage and killed people as a political act, it changed society. These are some stages in Dylan's musical career, and we'll just go through them very quickly. Then we'll watch a video. Then we'll listen to the songs, and then if we have time, we can come back and see, we can think about how do these songs plug into the stages of Dylan's career. So he emerges in, well, he graduates from high school. Less than 2 years later, he hitchhikes halfway across the country to New York City, and he gets he signs a record contract with a very, very important recording company called Columbia Records. And he presents himself as a folk singer. 2 years later, he goes through a very interesting change, and he becomes an electric guitar player. And his fans, who were folk singers, are angry and horrified, and we'll see some of that in some of the videos. He goes on a worldwide tour. Basically, he exhausts himself. Supposedly, he's in a motorcycle accident. And he goes into seclusion for several years. But even during that time, he's writing songs that even today are just being discovered. He's very prolific. He's written many songs, but he doesn't publish everything that he's recorded. In 1974, he goes back out on the road with the Rolling Thunder Revue. That's the first time I saw Dylan in a concert in 1976. Then in 79 to 81, this rock star who was born Jewish becomes an evangelical Christian. And he stands on the stage. The fans boo him because they don't want to rock and roll. And he's preaching to the audience and he plays Christian songs. So I have one Christian song for you to listen to. He lost a lot of his following because of his religious conversion experience and the way he presented himself on stage. And so for a period of time, while I would say he's still productive, maybe not to the same level as his previous productive output, but it doesn't compare to the other stages of his career. Beginning in 1988, he starts what has been referred to as the never-ending tour. So since 1988, even until today, when he's just turned 76, he performs more than 100 concerts all over the world, and he's still producing records, music, movies, participates in documentaries. He wrote a book that has been recognized with the Pulitzer Prize, which is a prestigious award in the United States. And then in 1997, he has this kind of rebirth, where he puts out albums that in some ways revitalize his career. So, okay, I'm sorry. So now we're going to learn the technology here. This is where we have the sound, and this is where we have what we can see. So now I'm going to play a very brief video that gives you a summary of Dylan's career, and then we'll go into the music. And the volume might change from video to video, just that's.
As a son of dance man.
This singer-songwriter brought folk to the masses. Welcome to WatchWhat's.com, and today we're taking a look at the life and career of Bob Dylan.
I give her my heart, but she wanted my soul. Don't think twice, alright.
Robert Allen Zimmerman was born on May 24th, 1941 in Duluth, Minnesota. His interest in folk music began at university when he performed in coffee houses under the name Bob Dylan. After a move to New York City in 1961, Dylan's harmonica skills caught the attention of Columbia Records. His self-titled debut consisted mainly of folk and blues standards and soul forward. However, Dylan's politically inspired sophomore effort, The Freewheelin' Bob Dylan, highlighted his singing and songwriting abilities.
Yeah, so my friend, is a blowing in the wind. Yeah, it's blowing in the wind.
As other performers recorded his songs, Dylan's international fame grew. His political beliefs developed as he joined the civil rights movement, and this was reflected on the top 20 album, The Times They Are Changing. Disillusioned by the protest movements, he released Another Side of Bob Dylan a few months later. for several years. A motorcycle accident led him to reclusiveness.
Well, what about the motorcycle as the image in your songwriting? You seem to like that.
Oh, we all like motorcycles to some degree.
I did.
1967's John Wesley Harding was notable for Dylan's return to traditional roots and acoustic music. 2 years later, he found success with the country record Nashville Skyline, which introduced the world to his softer singing style. Dylan then starred in the 1973 film Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
Who are you? That's a good question.
Its score featured several of his compositions, including the often covered Knockin' on Heaven's Door. Dylan's next effort, 1974's Planet Waves, was his first #1 album. He resumed touring that year, and this resulted in the live album Before the Flood. Though it initially received mixed reviews, 1975's Blood on the Tracks is now considered one of his greatest albums.
Standing on the side of the road, pulling on the shoes. It ain't out for these curves, don't lose and pay some dues. It ain't through, tired of being blue.
The Rolling Thunder Review came next, and this was a concert tour that featured numerous performers. Dylan then released the best-selling record Desire, which comprised lengthy, narrative-style songs. In 1978, Dylan directed and starred in the poorly reviewed film Ronaldo and Clara, embarked on a worldwide tour, and released Street Legal. Despite Jewish roots, Dylan embraced born-again Christianity at the end of the decade.
Baby, call your doctor. Baby, call your chief, but you'll have to serve somebody.
His evangelical beliefs were reflected in his next 3 records, including the Grammy-winning Slow Train Coming. He returned to recording non-religious material with 1983's Infidels. During the 1980s, several of Dylan's albums received mixed reviews. However, he found some success with the supergroup The Traveling Wilburys.
But it's alright. We're going to the end of the line.
And was critically praised for the 1989 record, Oh Mercy. He also toured with Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers and the Grateful Dead. In 1988, he began the Never Ending Tour, which continues to this day. The 1990 record, Under the Red Sky, was criticized for being overproduced, but he received more favorable reviews with the folk and blues sounds of the albums Good As I've Been to You and World Gone Wrong. He also achieved commercial success with the live compilation MTV Unplugged. After recovering from serious health problems, Dylan came out with the Grammy-winning record Time Out of Mind in 1997.
I'm sick of love. I wish I never met you.
He won his first Oscar in 2001 with the song Things Have Changed, which he wrote for the film soundtrack of Wonder Boys.
I used to care, things have changed.
That same year, Dylan experimented with jazz, swing, and rockabilly on the well-received disc Love and Theft. In 2003, Dylan contributed to the tribute album Gotta Serve Somebody, the gospel songs of Bob Dylan, and co-wrote and starred in the film Masked and Anonymous. His well-received 2004 autobiography, Chronicles Volume 1, was followed by the biographical documentary No Direction Home in 2005. After making his DJ debut in 2006, Dylan had another #1 record with the Grammy-winning Modern Times. The 2007 film biography, I'm Not There, featured numerous Dylan-inspired characters. 2 years later, the album Together Through Life made the 67-year-old Dylan the oldest artist to premiere at the top of the Billboard chart. This was followed by the holiday charity effort, Christmas in the Heart.
Who's got a big red cherry nose? Who's got a big red cherry nose? That's the way, oh, oh, oh.
Bob Dylan is a musical icon who revolutionized revolutionized pop music and became a spokesperson for the counterculture generation along the way. Thanks to his lyrics, music, and art, he is one of the 20th century's most influential personalities.
Out to the windy beach, far from the twisted reach of crazy sorrow.
So, that's a quick introduction to Bob Dylan. Now we're ready to start listening to some of the songs. The first two songs that I have, I put into a section of the presentation that I call Dylan in the Cultural Background. These are songs that just about any North American person has heard for different reasons. The first song is Blowing in the Wind. In April of 1962, Dylan spent about 10 minutes writing lyrics to a slightly revised melody of an old slave song, and the result was Blowing in the Wind. Almost immediately, everybody reported it, and I grew up listening to a version. My favorite version was by Peter, Paul, and Mary, and that's the version that we'll listen to now. So you can watch it, see it here, and you can follow the lyrics on the left screen. Okay? Any questions? Section called Dylan in the Cultural Background is the times they are changing. And this emerged at the beginning. He wrote this song in 1963. At the beginning of this decade of the 60s when things were changing. And this song has been called the anthem of the 60s. Okay. I'm curious to know if you've heard it. Quest is the name of a TV show in Canada.
Come gather round, people, where you roam, and admit that the waters around you have grown, and accept the facts and be drenched in bone. If your time to you is worth saving, then you better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone, for the times they are changing. Writers and critics, you prophesize with your pen, and keep your eyes wide, the chance won't come again. And don't speak too soon, for the wheels still in spin, and there's no telling who that is named. For the loser now, the winner to win, for the times they are changing. On senators, congressmen, we easy to call. Don't stand in the doorway, don't block up the hall, for he then gets hurt to be with his stall. For the battle outside raging will soon shake your windows and rattle your walls, for the times they are changing. Our mothers and fathers throughout the land, and don't criticize what you can't understand. Your sons and your daughters are beyond your command. Your old road is rapidly aging. Please get out of the new one if you're pain in your hand, for the times they are changing. The life is wrong and the curse is cast. The slowest one now will later be fast, as the present now will later be past. The order is rapidly fading, and the first one now will later be last, for the times they are changing.
So this next song I put in a section that I call Dylan in My Cultural Background. This is the journey that, so to speak, that I went through to discover Bob Dylan. In 1963, the United States and the Soviet Union almost had a nuclear war over missiles that were being put into Cuba. About 2 months before any of this became public, Dylan released this song called "A Hard Rains Are Gonna Fall." And for that reason, it was considered to be almost prophetic. If you follow the lyrics, you get the idea that he's talking about a nuclear war. He himself has said no, he wasn't, but people listened to it, and this is what they think. He released this song as a folk song when he was in his folk singing period. But the version that we've got now comes from 1994, and it's with an orchestra. If you're familiar with the song, then I think you will really like this particular version. Close the volume.
Well, you've been my blue eyes, graveyard. It's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard rain. What do you say, my blind son? What did you say, my darling young one? So you know, baby, the wild girls are running. I saw the highway of diamonds with nobody wanted. I saw a dead branch with blood that kept dripping. I saw a little man with her hands bleeding. I saw 10,000 talkers whose tongues around again. I saw guns and sharp swords in the hands of young children. And it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard beat. Why did you hear my divine song? Or did you hear my darling one? I heard the sound of the thunder and the road that I wanted. I heard the rubber wave and the grand wow. I had the $100 whose hands were blazing. I had 10,000 whispered and nobody listened. I had one person who started and everyone laughing. I heard the song of a poet who died in the gutter. And the sound of a clown when it cried in the alley. Yeah, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard beat. Where did you meet my blue-eyed son? Where did you meet my darling young one? I met a young child beside a dead pony. I met a white man and he walked a black dog. I met one woman, his body was burning. I met a young girl and she gave me a rainbow. I met one man who has a wounded in love. I met another man who was wounded in hatred. And it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard, it's a hard
powerful song, and I think that particular performance is very powerful too. The next song is very different. In 1970-71, I was a junior in high school, and a classmate lent me an album, and there was a song on the album, and I'd never heard it before, and it was many years before I would realize that Bob Dylan originally wrote the song. Maybe you've heard the song, but this is going to be a cover of a Bob Dylan song. All Along the Watchtower, which he wrote this during his seclusion period, and it's based on Isaiah in the Bible, Isaiah chapter 21. There's a section about the watchtower. This is Dylan's interpretation of that, played by Jimi Hendrix. Interpreted by Jimi Hendrix.
There must be some kind of way out of here. Send a trumpet to the thief. There's too much confusion.
This next song, probably you've heard too. It's also a cover by the Byrds, Mr. Tambourine Man. This is the first song when I think I really became aware of the lyrics of a song, of a Bob Dylan song. It was in 1974. I was in my second year of college in a small town outside of Austin. I hadn't transferred to the University of Texas yet. I didn't know what I wanted to study. I kept very irregular hours. I lived in a dormitory on campus. It was about 3:30 in the morning, and I was wandering around the dormitory looking for an excuse not to go to bed, when I heard this incredible sound coming from the stairwell on the 11th floor of the dormitory. It was a fellow classmate who was practicing his 12-string guitar, and this is the song he was playing. This is really the beginning of when I became aware of Dylan's lyrics, and this particular song talks about that very experience that I had, being young, looking for something to do, and not knowing what it was. This particular cover by the Byrds, I think, was a #1 song in the UK as well as the United States.
What was the belief that his family had done a little learning about him?
This is what it was like in the 60s to watch a group on TV, too. Sounds like the Beatles. It's almost as much fun to watch the audience as it is to watch them. Recognize the song? So, this next song, Dylan released in 1965. And a couple of years ago, it was voted by Rolling Stone magazine to be the #1 song of all time. song came out in 1965 when I was very young, in 5th or 6th grade. I didn't know anything about Bob Dylan. When I was in, maybe I heard it in high school. I can't remember. But when I was that second year of college, at the end of the semester, I had a job lined up in Houston where my parents lived. And my plan was to leave the dormitory for the end of the semester, live in my parents' house for the summer, where I had a job to save money, because in the United States, you have to pay for your education. It's not a free education like it can be here in Argentina. But I really did not want to do that. I wanted to stay in San Marcos, which was a nice small college town. I did not have a job. I did not have a place to sleep. And I only had $15 in my pocket. But I didn't want to go back and work construction in downtown Houston for the summer, because I had done that the summer before, and it wasn't fun, and I didn't want to do it. And I fought with myself, and I fought with myself. I was the very last person to check out of the dormitory, and as I was driving out of the parking lot of the dormitory, I still couldn't decide what to do, because I did not want to go to Houston. So I decided I will grab an 8-track tape that I had, stick it in my 8-track player, and the first song that I hear that says anything about what I should do, that's what I will do. I don't suggest that you make decisions like that, but that's what... I don't suggest that you make decisions like that, but that's what I decided to do in that moment. And as it happened, this was the beginning of the song, and for the first time, even though I had heard it many times, it's the first time that I listened to the lyrics to see what the lyrics would say. And when you listen to the song, you'll know the decision that I made. Also, one other note. You'll see up here I have Judas written up here. This particular performance was when Dylan had made the decision to play electric. And his fans, some of his fans loved it, and some of his fans hated it. He's playing this in England, Manchester, England in 1966, and you'll hear at the very beginning of before you see anything, a fan in the audience yells out, "Judas," which is to say, you betrayed yourself. You're a traitor. Watch Dylan's reaction. Maybe you can, there's some subtitles, maybe you can read what he says. Watch how he performs the song. had some people here who were full-singing fans of Dylan. That's why I left you. They didn't listen to other things. Okay. Well, so 1975, I transferred universities to the University of Texas at Austin, about 30 miles away. I decided that not only would I enroll in the university, but I would also attend classes. So I started to study the Middle East, Arabic, Hebrew, and one of my classmates was Jewish, a very avid Zionist, and a Dylan fanatic. And Dylan was now playing on his Rolling Thunder Review tour, and he insisted that I go watch Dylan play. So he bought the tickets. He spent the night at the auditorium outside so that we would be first in line. That particular night, while he was sleeping at the auditorium, I stayed up all night to study for my last exam. I took it in the morning, then I slept for a couple of hours, and I went to the concert. The song that we're going to hear now is one of the songs that he played, which comes from the album Blood on the Tracks. This particular performance was at the end of the tour, I think when he played in Colorado. And it always, this is the way, I like the way Dylan was dressed at the time. I was studying the Middle East, and he looks like a Bedouin nomad, the way he's dressed. This is when he was going through a phase where he was reconnecting with his Jewish heritage. can tell, it's not easy to read the lyrics the first time you hear a song, but this is about the breakup of his marriage to his wife, Sarah. Okay. This next song comes from a documentary, what's called the first rockumentary, about, in 1965, Dylan took a tour of the United Kingdom, and a cameraman followed along and just recorded what he was doing. And this is the opening scene from that documentary called Don't Look Back, and it's maybe one of the first ever music videos as well. I would be surprised if you haven't seen it. This too is iconic. It's kind of a rap song. Was that a song or a video that you've seen before? No? You like the song? Okay. Now we go to a very, very different kind of song. In 1979, Dylan made this very dramatic conversion to Christianity. And not only did he have this conversion experience, but he was very open about it. He wrote songs about it. He played the songs to the audience. The audiences booed him just like they booed him when he went electric. And he just argued with them. And I've got some concerts that I've recorded, and you can hear him telling them, if you don't like it, you can leave. This is what I'm going to play. I'm not interested in playing that other stuff right now. This is one of the songs from that period. And if you read the lyrics, I think you can tell that it's a genuine conversion experience that he had. This song is called In the Garden, and it's almost like a meditation when Jesus is in the Garden of Gethsemane the night before he is crucified. didn't get the opportunity. Instead, I lived in Austin, Texas, where I studied, and I wound up working for a state agency regulating the production of oil and gas. I was a bureaucrat, and I hated the job. One of the things that I did outside the job was to read Russian literature. And I read Tolstoy and War and Peace, and it fascinated me. And then I read anything I could find by Tolstoy or about Tolstoy. Then I read other Russian writers like Dostoevsky, Solzhenitsyn, several others. And what I noticed was all of the Russian authors, in their stories, they pay homage to Alexander Pushkin, who I later found out is considered the father of the modern Russian language. He's a poet. And so I read my first book by Tolstoy, War and Peace, I think in 1982. And as I read all this Russian literature, I used to ask myself, who in North American culture would be the equivalent of Pushkin? Who would be an American Pushkin? And it was just something I wondered about. That was in 1982 when it began. In 1995, for Christmas Day, my son gave me as a gift a recording of Dylan's 30th anniversary concert at Madison Square Garden. This concert was to commemorate his 30 years with Columbia Records. And what they did is they had many, many musicians who came and played only Bob Dylan songs with their own interpretation or version of the Dylan song. And as I was driving from my home in Austin to my parents in Houston for Christmas, I was listening to the tape. At the time, I didn't even have very nice equipment to listen to music. I didn't listen to music that much. But I heard this particular song that we're going to hear next. There's a certain moment when you can hear Eric Clapton playing his chords to go into just before he sings. And at that moment, it struck me that Bob Dylan is the American Pushkin. And since a month earlier I had become certified to referee soccer, I decided whenever I drive out to the soccer fields or drive to work, I'm just going to listen to Bob Dylan music, and I'm going to see if Dylan really is the American Pushkin. And so it was, for me, very interesting that last October, Dylan was awarded the Nobel Prize for Literature, because really the way that I discovered Dylan, even though I grew up with his songs, was through Russian literature. This is the song. Oh, it's in the And after this song, we will play one more, if we have time. Are there any questions or any comments or anything? Are you still there? I hope you put comments on the back, especially anything that you think I could do better in another performance, because my wife, who is a university professor, will grade them. And she knows my flaws better than anybody, and if you can come up with something that she does not have, you'll get extra credit. usually the cover. You know, you have the dust jacket, and you open it up, and you have something written on the inside cover and on the backside cover that summarizes the book. So in the early 60s, Dylan wrote this song called My Back Pages, which is about his life growing up. And the very famous lyrics in this song, I was so much older then, I'm younger than that now, is especially appealing to me now. And each stanza is played by a different musician, and maybe you'll recognize some of them. last song that we listened to, perhaps you've heard this song. It's a cover of a song that Dylan wrote. Maybe you'll be surprised to know that Dylan wrote the song. In December of 2003, I was evaluating a Catholic singles site for my then 18-year-old daughter. And her mother had died, my first wife had died several months before. And as I was evaluating the site for my daughter, I noticed a woman online. And with my first wife, I could say it was a case of love at first sight, but with my second wife, it would be a case of love before first sight. So this is number 13. Maybe you'll recognize the lyrics here. While I was refereeing a game, suddenly I thought of these lyrics, and it explains why I'm in Argentina. You heard this? Do you know the song? Did you know Dylan wrote it?
When the rain is blowing in your face and the whole world is on your case, I can offer you a warm embrace to make you feel my love. When the evening shadows and the stars fade, and there is no one there to dry your tears, I could hold you for a million years to make you feel my love. I know you haven't made your mind up yet, but I will never do you wrong. I've known it from the moment that we met. No doubt in my mind that you belong. I go hungry, I go black and blue. I go rolling down the avenue. No, there's nothing that I wouldn't do to make you feel my love. The storms are raging on the rolling sea and on the highway of dreams. The winds of change are blowing wild and free. You ain't seen nothing like me yet. I could make you happy, make your dreams come true. Nothing that I wouldn't do. Go to the ends of the earth for you to make you feel my love. To make you feel my love.
Okay, I'm not sure. I want to respect your time. If we have time, I'll play a very short 2-minute award ceremony where Jack Nicholson, the famous American gives Bob Dylan an award, a Lifetime Achievement Award. I find it very interesting because I think we watched it at UPA, because of the way that Dylan responds. And if we have time, we play that too. So watch this and just make a mental note about what Dylan is doing, what he's saying, what he thinks about what he's doing. What do you think Dylan is feeling about this? And then we can talk about it.
Constant state of restlessness that has enabled you to seek newer and better means of expressing the human condition with words and music, for living your creative life fearlessly and without apology, and leading the way no matter how the times change. The National Academy of Recording Arts and Sciences joins a worldwide network of grateful fans in presenting you this Grammy Lifetime Achievement Award. Congratulations.
Well, my dad, he didn't mean too much. You know, he's a very simple man, and he didn't mean a lot. But what he told me was this: he did say, son, he said, he said so many things, you know. He said, you know, it's possible to become so defiled in this world that your own mother and father will abandon you. And if that happens, God will always believe in your own ability to mend your own ways. Thank you.
So, could you hear? I don't know if the quality of the audio is very good. Did you hear what he said? What do you think that he knew what he wanted to say when he made the presentation? No? He hesitated, and then he seemed to be somewhat emotional, and then he tries to remember something his father said, and his father said so many things to him, and then he rattles something off. In my opinion, all of that was an act. He was doing a kind of a Charlie Chaplin kind of act, playing with the hat, turning around, acting like he didn't really know what he was doing. But for me, what was interesting is this was in 1991. Dylan is speaking to Hollywood, or to the music industry, the Grammy Awards. This is the cultural elite or popular culture in the United States, and maybe to some extent in the world. I don't want to be, I mean, it has an influence around the world. And in a way, in Dylan's own way, in my opinion, he's giving a kind of a lecture or a homily. He's, I think, in some way kind of acknowledging his own history, which wasn't always that exemplary. And then what he says, you can become so defiled that God, blah, 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 blah. But what's interesting about that to me is that he says here, you know it's possible to become so defiled in this world that your own father and mother will abandon you, and if that happens, God will always believe in your own ability to mend your own ways. To me, he put on this kind of act to get everybody's attention, and then that's what he said. But what's even more interesting to me is this. It's a verbatim quote from a rabbinical commentary on Psalm 27. Many years later, people, they're called Dylanologists, who just study all things about Bob Dylan. And they try to figure out, where does he get this from? What's the source for that? So in examining this particular talk, it's a verbatim quote from Psalm 27. He doesn't tell people where his inspiration comes from. He just does it. And in fact, even recently with his Nobel Prize, with his lecture, he talks about 3 different influences, 3 books that he read, one of which was Moby Dick by the famous American writer Herman Melville. And Dylan was accused of plagiarizing from an online site that reads these big books, and they make comments and commentary and summaries of the book. Dylan used some of it, and if you study it, you can see he lifted some of these passages, and he didn't cite them. And this is a charge now that in his later stuff, there are claims that he doesn't like to use quotes and identify his sources. But other people say this is the way he's always been. He comes from the folk song tradition, where this is what everybody does. And in 1961, when he began his career, when he was talking to somebody before his first album, he said, I'm playing some songs. Some I borrowed, some I wrote myself, and some I stole from other people. And I think that's still what he's doing to this very day. So, I think I've said enough. Thank you. And if you have any questions, if you want to fill anything out on there, I'd be happy to read it. If you, I have an email address if you wish to contact me. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Any questions you would like to ask now that he's here in class? Then you can rise.
Yes, I have a question. I didn't get what was the debate when we didn't know what the
Like a rolling stone? How does it feel to be on your own, no direction known, a complete unknown, like a rolling stone? I decided I ain't going home, and I thought, you know, my friend Joe's got a couch. He'll let me sleep on it for a day or two. He had a little apartment above the bus station. A week later, I found a job working construction, doing the same work I would have done in Houston. It actually paid more money because I had a little bit of experience. And it was the beginning of a whole new stage of life. Anything else? Okay, well, my wife will collect your answers and she'll grade them, and if you put your email on there, we'll send you your grade.
All right, so thank you very much for coming, for sharing. It's a clear way of showing Bob Dylan's progression through time, but at the same time, I felt that from the very beginning, his lyrics were powerful, indeed. So I agree with the Nobel Prize. I know there has been lots of controversy going on.
It's an interesting topic.
Yeah, that would be for another talk, the controversy around the Nobel Prize, but you can see through the lyrics